Well, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to our Imagine Pittsburg 2030 Board Summit. My name is Blake Benson. I have the pleasure of representing the Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce. And it's also my pleasure to welcome you to the Frisco Event Center. I was talking to Larry Fields. Where did Larry go? And I was telling Larry, I said, it's a beautiful podium. I've never seen that before. And Larry said that this was once used by former President George Bush. Is that right, Larry?
That's right.
So I can feel the power of a former president here. But I can assure you I'm the least influential president that's ever used this podium. But you may be asking, why exactly are you here? It's not for a free lunch, although thanks to the generosity of Miller's Professional Imaging, the meal is free today. But you are here because you and the organization that you represent are leaders in our community. And your work will be critical in helping us address issues and seize opportunities for our community for the next decade. Just to give you an idea of who we have in the room, we have a number of former and current Pittsburgh City Commissioners and Mayors. If you will raise your hand if you're a former City Commissioner or current City Commissioner. Welcome. I also want to thank you for what you have done to lay the foundation for a lot of things that are happening in our community right now, and we appreciate your efforts. Of course, we have Darren Hall and the entire City of Pittsburgh department head and administrative team here with us today. We have state and federal representatives. We have leaders from our education community. Obviously, Pittsburgh State University, USD 250, St. Mary's Colgan, the Crawford County Career and Technical Education Center, Family Resource Center. We have leaders from our healthcare community, Ascension Via Christi Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas, and Crawford County Mental Health. We have leadership from the business community in the Pittsburgh Area Chamber of Commerce, a number of my board members here. Thank you for being here as well. We have some of the most influential organizations in our community represented here today. The Pittsburgh Area Young Professionals, the Community Foundation, the YMCA, and the Rotary Club. Just don't tell the Kiwanians, okay? We have our tourism partners from the Crawford County Convention and Visitors Bureau. And sometimes, for those of us that are regulars here, we don't think much about tourism and the role that it plays in our community. Did you realize that June of this summer was the second busiest month ever in terms of hotel traffic for Crawford County? And that doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's Devin Gorman and the board at the CVB, and Chris, obviously, and everything they do on a regular basis. And of course, we have two Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 steering committees that are represented here today. We appreciate you being here and appreciate you getting us to this point. Before we go any further, there are some folks that I'd like to thank for their efforts in making today possible. First of all, from the City of Pittsburgh, Sarah Runyon and Britton Ritter. Please give them a big round of applause. They worked hard on this. Thank you as well to all of our speakers that are here today. Obviously, you're going to hear more from them in just a few moments. As I mentioned, Miller's Professional Imaging not only covered the food today, but also the cost of the materials on your table. A big round of applause for Miller's, please. And of course, our ringleader throughout this process is Joe Delasega. You're going to hear more from Joe a little bit later, but Joe certainly has kept us very focused and corralled and making sure we're headed in the right direction. So Joe, thank you for your efforts in getting us here. A little bit of background, you all have at your tables some background on the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 process itself. And I will even venture to go a little further back than what is mentioned in the booklet. We had a chamber board planning retreat in 2010, and we were discussing a lot of the things that we always do. Our role in economic development, how do we grow our community, different things like that. One of our board members, Jeff Poe, said, time out. Everything you're talking about is great. But at this very time, there are a dozen other organizations in this community talking about the exact same thing. And at what point do we tie this all in as a larger community plan? It was a question we couldn't answer. So we stepped back and we engaged our partners, City of Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh State University, the school district, the hospital, everyone in our community to start putting together a true community vision and community strategy of what we wanted our community to look like by the year 2030. And in 2010, 2030 seemed like a long way off, and it's hard to believe that 9 years has gone by, and here we are, only 11 years now from 2030. So the original plan came out in 2012 and featured 4 distinct pillars that we wanted to focus on. They were economic development, housing, public wellness, and infrastructure. The plan was that we would come back every 5 years and update it. When we did that in 2017, we added education because we figured out pretty quickly how in the world can you put a plan together for the future if you don't address education. So we added education and also marketing. Because what we found was, even though there were lots of good things happening in our community and good things happening with the IP 2030 plan, we weren't doing a good job of telling the community about that. And certainly the addition of Sarah's position has benefited that tremendously. So that's a little bit of background on how the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 process got started. And if Jeff Poe were here today, I don't mean to make it sound like he died, just moved Johnson. Yeah. But if Jeff were here today and he saw the leaders from 18 of this community's most influential organizations all in the same room, all talking about a shared community vision, he would say, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So that's why we're here. We're also going to talk today about what we have accomplished over the last several years, obviously looking forward to what we will accomplish over the next decade. So today you'll hear thoughts from several different viewpoints. You'll hear from leaders who were born here, moved away, and came back. You'll hear from a recent Pittsburgh State University graduate who could have gone anywhere in the world to grow her career and decided to do it right here in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And you'll also hear from a former Pittsburgh State alumni that is currently investing millions of dollars in our community to address one of our community's biggest shortfalls. And then, of course, we'll bring it home with Gordon Elliott. Gordon is no stranger to anybody in our community, both the business community and also the nonprofit community as well, and Joe Delasega, who tends to be intertwined in everything that is happening in our community. I think we all know the biggest risk with any strategic plan, and you've all done them in your organizations. What is that biggest risk? That it sits on a shelf, because we've all seen it happen. So we wanted to make sure when we released the first plan back in 2012 that didn't happen. And the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 plan became the foundation for several other individual planning efforts in our community. The City of Pittsburgh, I can tell you we at the Chamber of Commerce recently released a strategic plan, and IP 2030 is a huge part of that. Live Well Crawford County. I mean, there are a number of other organizations that use that as the backbone for their future efforts, and that's what it was intended to do. We've had a lot going on in our community over the last 7 years. I don't think often enough we stop and celebrate those successes. But over the last 7 years, our community has seen $500 million in new projects. $500 million for a community of our size, that's huge. 1,200 new jobs. Our median wage is up over 10%. We've had several notable large projects at Pittsburgh State University, the Bitnell Center, the Plaster Center, Block 22. We've had a successful bond issue from USD 250. Going back to those economic development projects, did you realize that the largest economic development project anywhere in Southeast Kansas over the last 30 years occurred in the last 3? $80 million Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel project that is doing tremendously well. And Doug, we certainly appreciate you being here and appreciate your leadership. I mentioned our booming tourism sector. Devin had a board meeting this morning and just talking about all the things that not only are going on, but what are possible. It's really a great time for our tourism sector. And I think you all would agree that our town looks a lot better than it did back in 2010, thanks to the City of Pittsburgh's housing and infrastructure development efforts and how aggressive they have been in a number of areas, but especially just making our town more attractive, not only for those of us that live here, but for others wanting to invest in our community. But there's still more to do, and it's going to take everyone in this room to get it done. And you're going to hear from some speakers today that I know that will inspire you and let you know where you fit into this puzzle and how you can get involved. So our first real speaker today, so that's not me, our first speaker today is Dawn McNay, who currently serves on the Pittsburg City Commission. As I was looking over the list of organizations that were invited here today, I think Dawn is involved with at least 3/4 of them. I think Young Professionals is the only board that she's got serving on, and just because she hasn't gotten around to it. But she's here today wearing her Pittsburg City Commissioner hat. Please help me welcome Dawn McNay.
So I do have a purpose today, and I just want to start off with a little thought and put it in your mind, and then I'll follow up with that at the end. When I moved to Pittsburgh in 2012, here here's the narrative. Pittsburgh's poor. The economy is terrible. Pittsburgh is unhealthy and unsafe. Pittsburgh's schools are bad. They're not just mediocre. Pittsburgh's school system is bad. It's an unsafe place. Pittsburgh is just run down. There are no nice neighborhoods left in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Pittsburgh has meth labs everywhere. Literally, I was told from the Assistant Attorney General at Ken Brock's house in his back, expansive Leadership Kansas setting with this beautiful pond and his gazebos and his barn and his barn's barn and his horse's barn and everything else he has. And he said, right over that tree line, I promise you there's a meth lab. And that really hit me. That was before I had this job. This is a narrative I was introduced to 7 years ago when my family first moved to Pittsburgh. I was actually told at one point that we couldn't build hiking and biking trails because the kids would get snatched right off of the trail. And the guy said it with a straight face in a public meeting, and he meant. Wow. Fortunately, Pittsburgh had just adopted the Imagine Pittsburg 2030 plan, which made it easy for me because I didn't have to go through all the hassle of hiring somebody and working through that. The work was already done. I was just tasked with, hey, go implement it, which is a good problem to have as a city manager. By working alongside the Chamber of Pitt State, Ascension Via Christi, Community Health Center, I'm not going to name everybody, but you know who you are, the private businesses, the community leaders, we've achieved many, many successes. It's in several of your handouts, but if you have this on your table, I believe, I don't know if this is the front or the back, but those are the accomplishments, those are the things that I think the first 5 years that stand out that we've achieved. So in 2017, I got to participate in the effort to reestablish the goals for the new Imagine Pittsburgh 2030. This plan has a scope that the city cannot address alone, and that's why you're here today. You're going to hopefully hear that over and over. It's beyond our ability to significantly impact our schools, our health care, our daycare. These are things that city tax dollars can't reach out and touch. We can't affect that. We can do some things for infrastructure. We can clap loudly and say, go get them, but I don't set the curriculum at the university. I don't have any input on what they're doing at the grade school. Somebody else has to do that, and that's one of the goals in this updated plan. I've heard the comment, why do we need to change? And it's a fair statement. We don't need to change, okay? But based on the previous statements I shared with you, there are numerous reasons why we need to grow. And growing is obviously changing, so we simplify it and say, things need to change, but that's what we're talking about. We need to grow this community. Who wants to be known as poor, or unhealthy, or uneducated, or run down, or have those in your family or your friends thought of that way? Nobody wants to feel like that. That's not a good feeling. Growing also expands our tax base, which makes the delivery of services and the opportunities in this community less of an impact on those of us that own property and live here. In today's world, fear seems to be rampant. And it's not just in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Politically, fear is probably the most used motivator today, which is pathetic in its own statement. But we'll leave that as what it is. Leaders used to lead people to something. Remember the days? That's why they're called leaders, because they lead you somewhere good. Now, our leaders fearfully lead people away from things that they don't like. So we've kind of crossed a bridge there. Fear of change is real. All of us have experienced small changes, significant changes in our life, and you understand there's apprehension, there's consternation, and fear of anything changing of the status quo is something that we all legitimately feel and can relate to. But fear has two responses associated with it. And obviously there's the fight or flight, take action, or we can freeze. You know, we've all seen the movie where here comes the bad person with the knife, and oh, they froze, they're done. And that's the last scene for them, and you're on to the next high school student or college student. Let's don't freeze at our big moment. And this is it, folks. If you're paying attention, we're not here like they said, because Blake said the lunch is good, it's free. is our opportunity. Don't let it drive your actions. More importantly, don't let fear drive your inactions. Don't be influenced by the fear of being criticized for standing up for what you believe in. But just as important, standing up against what you know is wrong. That seems to be the food of the day. I'm not going to be about anything, but I'm going to tear down what you're about and tell you that it's wrong and make you feel bad for thinking that way. That's fear mongering at its worst, and that will hold us back as a country, as a state, and definitely in this small community that we live in. Pittsburgh hasn't grown significantly in 80 years. Think about that. Our goal is to grow. So if we haven't grown in 80 years, this is a significant achievement if we can pull this off. But in order to pull it off, we've got to move away from the status quo. You cannot just do the same thing over and over. We can challenge the way things have always been done, though, without condemning them. Nobody's judging the past. We're just saying we'd sure like to do something different in the future, and change is going to have to be associated with doing that. We need to leave the status quo behind and pursue those things which will allow us to achieve these 2030 goals, and it's critical that you take that away. Our community has the opportunity right now to do that, to take the major step. For one, we have all of you. Look around this room. If anything gets done in this town, I can promise you there's a 99% chance that it's got somebody in this room's fingerprints on it. Providing quality housing for everyone who wants to live in Pittsburgh will not happen overnight, but it's going to happen. Changing the reputation of our local schools while simultaneously strengthening the character of our students will not be easy, and it will not happen overnight, but it's going to happen. Creating a thriving local economy, think of the concept there, free from outside forces which limit our ability to attract the industry that we want and to grow. Leaving those behind is not going to happen overnight. That's going to be a big struggle, but it's going to happen. And providing the very best medical care. It's already underway, but imagine that. Don touched on it. The health of our community. We're not going to get there overnight, but I promise you, it's going to happen. Finally, you're serving on boards because you wanted to. You made this choice. I'm not sure where you work, but where I work, we don't assign people to boards. If somebody in the community wants to do something, they see a board they want to get on, they throw their name in. But more importantly, somebody else saw that you could have value on that board, and they got behind you and either voted for you or clapped loudly when your name was called. So you've got yourself in this game, you've got people that already have your back in this game. And what board service does is it allows you a chance to take action. It's something you can do outside of your normal life to make a difference. You have things to offer. Everyone in this room has significant things to offer, and we're asking you today to step up and take the steps with us. So in closing, let's take a moment and remember the comments from the beginning. But what if we changed our community so the narrative in 2030 actually read a little differently? What if it read like this? The Pittsburgh economy is booming. Well, it's kind of booming anyway, but what if it's booming with a capital B? Pittsburgh is a model for what a healthy, clean, safe community can look like. What if that was the narrative? How about Pittsburgh schools and PSU are incredible. My kids can't wait for the semester to start. How about Pittsburgh has STEM labs everywhere? My kid has a bright future. How different would that conversation be? What about just simply Pittsburgh is a beautiful place? I just moved here. Our house is amazing, and it's in such a terrific neighborhood, and I love my neighbors. What if that was the narrative? The current IP 2030 plan has goals and objectives that the city can't address alone. We need to incorporate the entire community, and that is why you are here today.
Thank you, Derek. Great job. Well, we all have our own story and our own reason for being here in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Because I'm willing to venture that all of you, if you wanted to today, could pursue an opportunity in a different community. You choose to be here. And I love hearing the stories of how and why people live in Pittsburgh. Folks like Alicia Seals that lived in another part of southeast Kansas and always had her eye on moving to Pittsburgh and had the opportunity to do so not long ago and is now doing a great job at USD 250. Brandy Johnson, a local product that went off to Kansas City, began her career, now is back here, in case you haven't noticed, leading one of the fastest growing marketing and advertising agency anywhere in our state. She's doing it here in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Mike Moore, one of our, I can't call you new anymore, you've been here for a couple of years. But in case you haven't noticed, Mike is doing an incredible job with our Pittsburgh Family YMCA, and he's here because he wants to be. So we picked out a few stories that we figured would resonate with you and wanted to invite some speakers up to share why they're here in Pittsburgh, what brought them back, and most importantly, why they continue to stay. And our first speaker is someone who, again, is a local product, moved off from most of his career and came back to be closer to family, but instead of just coming back and taking up space, he and Rich Profit and the USD 250 School Board are doing an incredible job of preparing our students for their futures. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the Assistant Superintendent for USD 250, Dr. Graham Hansen.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. Darren, really, really good. I mean, Don, excellent as well, Blake, but that hit home. And I want to say this. So I was asked, why did I come back? Well, I came back because of family, number one. I'd be a liar if I didn't say that. But I came back because of opportunity. The opportunity to give back to a community. We moved here when I was in the 3rd grade, and I stayed here until after my freshman year of college. And I was given a lot. I said this before, I think I'm in the position I'm in because of the teachers that I had and the experience that I had in Pittsburgh back in the 70s and 80s. And so it's a good opportunity for me to give back. I will say this though, when you started, Darren, and you said that, the narrative was this, and it was kind of negative about Pittsburgh, that hurts. I mean, that resonates with me, especially on the school side of things. Where did we go wrong in allowing that to happen? I'm going to make a suggestion here, because now I've come back after being gone somewhere between 35 and 40 years in other positions, a career educator in Arkansas and Missouri, and I come back and all I can do is give you my input of what I see at this point. But the one thing that I think that maybe we failed over the last 40 years is telling our story. And telling our story the positive ways. Because I've heard those stories too. I've got I have 2 sisters that live here in town, and I've got a couple of brother-in-laws that are somewhat opinionated, if you know who they are. And I've heard them say those same things, but Pittsburgh schools, it's a dangerous place and whatnot. And every time I say, no. I can tell you, coming back, the experience, that's not the case. Pittsburgh schools are in a very, very good shape. Guess what? They're going to get a lot better in the near future with our strategic plan, but they are in good shape. But it's that we're not selling ourselves, we're not branding ourselves. There's that old story that if you're not telling your story, whether it's in business and industry, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education, if you're not telling your story, somebody else is going to tell that story for you, and it's probably not going to be the story that you want told. And so I think that's the lesson learned, is that we've got to, and that's part of our strategic plan at the school district, is to move forward and to tell our story and get the good word out there that we were doing. And we need to get this message about the growth that's going on in Pittsburgh, Kansas. We need to keep publicizing and keep bombarding people with that message to keep the positive momentum moving forward. All right, I was also asked to just quickly bring up, what do I see moving in? Well, I see thriving community. I've lived in communities close to Pittsburgh size that would love to have the business and industry base that we have. We sit here on a daily basis and think we want more, and that's good. We should, but we also need to really realize how thankful we should be for what we have. People was talking about quality of life and amenities. I see a community that has a lot of amenities. We have a lot of things available for the people that live in Pittsburgh. That's from somebody coming back after 40 years. There's a lot more here to offer for our people than what were 40 years ago. I think one of the biggest strengths, and not every community our size has this, is we have Pittsburgh State University in our backyard. We have to embrace that. Rich and I both, when we came in, were shocked that we weren't, as a school district, partnering as much with Pittsburgh State University as what we expected. That's got to change, folks. That's not every community our size has that advantage, and we need to take full advantage of it. Okay? Schools are I mean, that's my passion, obviously. I've already told you that our schools are in good shape. I mean, I'm a career educator. I start tomorrow is my 35th first day of school. So I've spent a lifetime. Well, add the 13 years that I had so I'm getting close to 50 years of schooling. And I still love it, but we are in good shape in Pittsburgh schools. They're our safe place. Our kids are being very, very successful. And we've got great things to offer them, and it's only going to get better from here. The final thing that I'll say is, I think this is a perfect storm. I was really impressed when I saw this IP 2030 plan in place. It takes courageous leadership to move anything. I bet, if you look back at Pittsburgh's history, that there were courageous leaders that got us to where we were today. And some of you may be sitting in this room. I'm sure Gordon Elliott, for sure, was one of them. And I'm sure there's other. Ken Brock, I saw him. Courageous leadership has gotten us to where we are today. But you can't stop. You know, somebody made a comment about what happens if you freeze and if you stop. Well, guess what? What happens is you get past. And people around you get better than you. And so we've got to continue to get better. And what I see is the conversation going on with courageous leadership at the city. I see courageous leadership represented in our businesses with the chamber. I know that we have courageous leadership at Pittsburgh State. I'm sure that we have courageous leadership in our medical community. And I feel certain that we have courageous leadership in our school system. That's a perfect storm. We get all those people together through this process. Look out 2030. It's going to be exciting times. So thank you for the ability to talk to you.
Good job, Brad. Thank you. And we will have time for questions and answers a little bit later. So if there are any of our speakers that you'd like a little bit more information or like some clarification or follow-up question, we will have that opportunity. And I'm glad Brad referred to Ken Brock. We're talking about our economic development and basically our community successes. In case you haven't noticed, something that this community has been working on for over 70 years, the Highway 69 effort, is within 5 years of extending that 4-lane highway all the way from Kansas City down to Pittsburgh. And that's huge. So Ken, thank you to you and the Highway 69 Association for all your leadership in making that happen. So there are, as Brad mentioned, there are a number of good things about living in a university community. And one of the biggest things is that Pittsburgh State University, the reach that it has in bringing students here from other communities. Johnson County, down northwest Arkansas, and certainly Wichita, which is where our next speaker comes to us from. And I would venture to guess, Dr. Scott, I don't know if there are numbers, but I would imagine as a community, we probably don't keep nearly as many of those outside students in our community once they graduate as we would like. But boy, we were fortunate to keep this one. She actually graduated last December and has joined the city of Pittsburgh as their assistant planner, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her story. Please help me welcome Britton Brenner.
Thank you, Blake, and good afternoon to everyone in the audience. Like many people in this room, Pittsburgh State is what brought me to this community. I came here in 2015 for an education, and that's it. I used to say, Pittsburgh's a really fun town. It's a great place to get an education, but it's definitely not someplace I'd want to live. And even I cringe a little bit saying that now, but it was true then, but it's not true now, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about. In my job at the city in community development and housing, IB 2030 is at the forefront of everything that we do. Whether I'm working on housing projects with Quentin, or working with people in the community to plan events, or working with consultants to create plans for our community. The objectives and goals in IB 2030 truly serve as a guidebook for the decisions made in our office on a day-to-day basis. And in the past few months, we've really had an opportunity to take a look at the improvements that have been made to that plan since 2012. And as we did that, I quickly saw a correlation between the improvements made to this plan and why I chose to stay last December. Like Brad said, the improvements that have been made have elevated the quality of life in this community. It's introduced new amenities to this market, and it's reinvigorated long-standing amenities. And those are the things that keep people like me here. It's not always the big things either. Last December when I was deciding what community I wanted to live in, it was small things that I thought about. Like my neighborhood. I love where I live. I love my neighborhood in Pittsburgh. I thought about the small business community. I thought about how accessible my community leaders are here, and how accessible they are to me, and how willing they are to lend an ear not only to my concerns, but also my ideas. Those are the things I thought of, because honestly, I could have gone home to Wichita and worked for family businesses. I could have worked for past employers. I could have gotten an education and a master's anywhere through an online program. But instead, I chose to live and work in a community that I loved, and that I knew would allow me to do work that matters. And I chose to attend an institution I respected, and that invested in me immensely as a young person. And like so many people that stick around in Pittsburgh, I didn't just choose to stay. I chose to invest in our community. Invest in a part of the community I feel the most connected to, which is our downtown. I'm lucky to come to work every day and call myself a representative for downtown Pittsburgh, Kansas, and work with amazing downtown business owners. And I'm excited to be able to call myself one in the next couple months as I open a small shop in Block 22 with another student. And the fact that that's even a possibility for someone my age is a testament to the hard work all of you have done in this community and built business. And it's exciting that it's not over. Like Darren said, momentum's building and there's so much more to do. I'm excited to sit down at tables like this in 2030 and look at the progress made on this plan even from today. So thank you. I want to thank the people in the room that were part of the formation of this plan. I want to thank them and the rest of you that have done work in the past, whether you knew you were doing it or not, that has allowed us to accomplish some of these goals and get closer to accomplishing these goals. It's the hard work and dedication of all of you that allows me to step into my role at the city and do work that matters and work that I love. That's not lost on these people. So thank you for building such a solid foundation for our community. I look forward to the next 11 plus years working with you to continue to accomplish these goals as we build a community we're even more proud of than we have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Britton. So like many of you, I have the pleasure of speaking with lots of different groups in our community on a pretty regular basis. I think I've just about spoken to every PEO group at this point. It's taken me 13 years, but there are a lot of them. But as I talk to parents in particular, the biggest concern is not crime or specific curriculum or anything like that. It always tends to be opportunities for their kids, wanting to keep their kids in our community, or if their kids want to go spread their wings somewhere, doing like Randy did and coming back when the time is right. But will there be the opportunity here? Our next speaker is a great example of someone who was born and raised here, went off, started his career, and quite honestly could have gone anywhere in the world to grow that career. But he saw some things happening here in Pittsburgh that he liked, and he moved back to Pittsburgh just a year or two ago, and I know that he will be one of our emerging and future leaders for years to come. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to share his story, Nick Delasega.
Thank you, Blake, and thanks for everybody for coming. So my dad and a lot of you know him. I'm trying to not stand by him because we showed up at work wearing the exact same clothes. So he is my dad, but if I'm avoiding him, that's why. A lot of familiar faces here, but a lot that I don't know too, so just a little bit about myself. I grew up here in town, went to St. Mary's Colgan, and graduated, went to Pitt State, and was there, graduated in 2007 with opportunities to go in different places. I chose to begin my career working at KPMG in Kansas City. Spent 3 years there, and then had a chance to move to Wichita to work for Coke Industries. Worked for Coke for 7 years, 4 of which in Wichita, and the last 3 were in Atlanta. When I was asked to just talk about why I came back, there were some things that were starting to happen. The longer I was away, and the further I got, when I come home, there was kind of a tug that initially maybe wasn't there, but like the longer time I spent away, the more it was there. And a couple key things happened. Probably like 2013, 14, maybe 15, somewhere in there. I came back, and it was a Pitt State home game in the fall, and it was a beautiful day. Tailgating, and everybody was out there, and it was great. Game came and went. We won. After the game, I went to 505, and I don't know, Sean, if you remember this, but at that time, Block 22 was a dream, and he was talking about all the big things going on, and I remember thinking, like, okay, like, that's pretty cool, and it was there, but at that point, still not a lot of, not a pull yet to come back. Fast forward a couple years, 2016, I had just moved to Atlanta the year prior. Things were going well. I mean, I feel like my career was on a good trajectory, and having a little success there. My grandmother passed away, and she lived a life here, has 6 kids, all still here in the community and very involved. And I came back and went to her funeral, and it was awesome. I mean, there was a feel here that I don't think you mimic anywhere else. Now Pittsburgh's home for me. My family's all here, everything like that. But that kind of stuff. Like, I don't think if I lived somewhere else that I'd be able to achieve the things that she achieved here just by being in this community. And so that was kind of thing number 2. That was in 2016. Another thing happened. My other grandmother's still alive, who lives now in the medical lodge across from the hospital. Came back a little while later, and I was talking to her, and she was like, "No, this is where I'm from. Like, this is home, And all of these things kind of added up right around the same time. My brother was talking about coming back home, and he's got a family. And so I guess the further I got away, and the more chances I had, kind of like ask myself, what am I pursuing? What am I going for? And everything that I'm pursuing can be pursued right here. And in a lot of ways, I think people here are happier, at least in my opinion. They're nicer. There's no traffic, nearly as much honking as there is in Atlanta. And so when I really got into it, we started talking Christmas 2017 about, all right, what would it look like if I moved back? And in the conversation, there were some opportunities to go towards our family business. And it was going to be maybe a bit of a stretch at first, but we knew that if we worked hard and these things played out, then it would be a good choice, a good decision. And so I moved back last summer, and it's been a great decision. I've been blessed to kind of get back into the community, reacquaint myself with everything going on, and now part of the benefit of moving away is you kind of get to see the rest of other people and what's out there. And along the way, I made a lot of great friends. I think sometimes living other places, meeting other people in bigger places, it takes a lot of work to accomplish the things that just happen organically in a smaller community. And I think I've met people and friends that I have yearn for the thing that we have here. So with that, right now, I'm kind of on the shoes on the other foot, and now I'm the one trying to tell people what's going on in Pittsburgh. I have a cousin that just told me she wants to move back. She lives in Kansas City now. I have 3 friends that are this close, that aren't from here. And when I look at my grandmother's, for example, and my ancestors and what brought them here in the first place. I think that the same story can be told now, today. And that's the story I'm trying to tell. So, I just want to thank you for inviting me here. I'm blessed to be here, part of the community, and I'm excited to see what happens. And we don't need to wait till 2030. I mean, I think it's already going on now, like 2020, you know? Like, so, thanks again.
Great to have you back in Pittsburgh. Well, as I mentioned, there are lots of things going well in our community. If you have noticed, our economy is doing well. We're creating jobs. But one of those areas that we as a community still have a lot of work to do is housing. There was a number that came out a couple of years ago that showed that 65% of the people who work in Pittsburgh commute in from other areas. And I really applaud Darren and his team as they started looking at why that was the case. Because if you think about it, as a community, we don't capture the true value of all of those jobs being created if those people aren't living in our community. And they figured out pretty quickly that it was a housing shortage that we have. And people would move to Pittsburgh and make this their home if the houses were available. So then I enjoyed watching them really go out and speak with developers that may be interested in our community. They took the smartest strategy that you can. They went with someone that has a tie to the community and knows what Pittsburgh is all about and already believes in Pittsburgh. And this gentleman will do more to help address that issue than anybody has over the last 10 years. So please help me welcome the developer of the new Silverback Housing Edition, Mickey Benneman.
Thank you all. I generally don't get applause like that, so that's kind of different. Before I get started, I might have to use my cheaters like Darren, so if I do, I apologize. Yeah, a little bit about myself. I see a lot of people in here that I consider friends. I've known you guys for 50 years, but there are new people coming on. I've had the pleasure to meet, some over here that have moved to Pittsburgh to stay here. That's pretty impressive, it really is. I was actually born about 3 miles down the road. My wife and I, we dated in high school. She lived right across the street from the college. Got married at 5th and Pine Presbyterian Church over here. So there's a lot of memories that go back just in this little 5-mile circle or radius, something like that. But is that the reason I came back? Well, first of all, the main reason I came back is that guy sitting right there, Darren Hall. It's 6 o'clock in the evening, and my phone's ringing. I look and I go, that's a Pittsburgh number. I wonder who that is. And I answered. Darren Hall's on the other end. Didn't know what it looked like or talked about. He's talking about wanting to put a new subdivision in Pittsburgh, Kansas. Would I be interested? And of course, he couldn't see me chuckle, but I grinned and I kept talking to him. Why would you put a subdivision in Pittsburgh, Kansas? And it's exactly what Darren was talking about. Everybody told you it doesn't work. It won't work. There's no way it'll work. There's no money down there. People can't buy houses. So anyway, I kept giving excuse after excuse. We were actually in the middle of our 3rd project when he called. So we were a little bit busy at the time. But finally I said, okay, trying to be nice, I said, okay, if I would consider doing this, it would have to be on some ground out there around the university. Not that we don't like the rest of Pittsburgh, but I go out there to Centennial and Rouse, and there is a vitalization taking place out there. There's just energy. A lot of that to do, Dr. Scott is Pittsburgh State University, of course it is. But anyway, his answer to that was, keep going. I said, you know of land out by Pittsburgh State University. He says, well, actually, Pittsburgh State University owned it. We traded him for Block 22. And I said, what's Block 22? He starts describing. I thought, tell you what, I might come down and just look. And he said, if you come down and look, I'll buy you lunch. Well, I'll go anywhere for food. I mean, I was in the car heading that way. We go out, he takes me on a piece of ground. I fall in love with it. I mean, it's gorgeous. If you guys have a chance, the roads are almost in. We're tree lined. It's probably the most exciting project that I've ever, thought about over the last 25 years. I've been developing in Johnson County for 25 years. And then he takes me to lunch. Who do we sit down at the next table but some guy named Joe Delasega that I've known for 40 years. Mr. Pittsburgh. And I thought, think this is a hook. I think they're drinks. But anyway, we had a good day. I was excited. Went back. My wife says, well, what'd you think? I go, something tells me I like what I saw down there. She goes, really? I said, they're doing things right down there. They just really are. So I started thinking, I said, let me go through this. There's three things that when we started developing that just had to work. The first one is obvious, the economy. You know, people, if you don't have a good economy and people don't have money to buy your houses, I don't care what you build. They may love your house. If they can't buy it, what good does that do you? So I started thinking, I mean, Pittsburgh's got a lot going for it. Watco, Miller's that supplied this. Pittsburgh State. You know Pittsburgh State's always going to be here. Great employer. Got Dr. Scott, I'm sorry, we've got great leadership there right now. Top to bottom, he's laughing, but it's true. By the way, I played high school basketball and football against Dr. Scott. He was a pretty good high school athlete, I'm telling you right now. I've never played golf with him, don't even know if he plays golf, but if he plays golf anything like he played basketball and football in high school, don't let him bet you money, because you're probably going to lose. So. But anyway, sorry to be bother you, but sorry about that. But it's true. Anyway, so the first thing's the economy. Well, I looked around, checked the box, it all worked. So, you know, the second thing you're looking for is basically, what are the schools like? You hit the nail on the head. Everybody talks bad about the schools and all that. So I just set an appointment, went and talked to Dr. Prophet, Rich Prophet, I love that name. I want that name. But anyway, after about an hour of visit with him, he said there's a plan, there's a vision. He said Pittsburgh schools is on its way up. And I come out there feeling good. And then I thought, well, I drove around the area. Frontenac's building new facilities, Gerard's building new facilities. I thought there is an energy of people living around there that have a high, they put basically a high mark that they want their children to have good schools. People in Pittsburgh do too. So why can't we get the school system started? I mean, there's no reason we can't, and I think it's on the way up. Okay, and then last but not least, what is the people you're going to be working with? In other words, when we put a development in, we're there 5 to 7 years, so we're going to be a part of it. You've all heard the term location, 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 and it is so true. Well, obviously our location here is Pittsburgh, Kansas, okay, so what's the city management team like? Because those are the people that are going to be basically your boss. You know, hey Jay, hey Darren, can we put this in? No? Oh, okay. And they're the boss because you have to abide by the city's rules. But I have never, and let me back up, our first project that we did 25 years ago was in Olathe, Kansas. I had this same little checklist. First thing we thought, we're going to be Blue Valley Schools. I mean, you've all heard Blue Valley Schools. They're just, everybody wants to be in Blue Valley Schools. Then we stumbled on this piece of ground, and it's Olathe school system. So the realtor called me up and said, hey, I've got the ground you're looking for. And so I said, where's it at? He told me, I said, well, Wally, that's in Olathe. Same thing you guys are saying here. Schools suck. It's horrible. Olathe has nothing going on. It was a dumps. You guys have a starting point right now that's like 100 years farther out than they were when my first project was in Olathe. Olathe started building brand new elementary schools, which elementary schools brought in business. It just started feeding on itself, and it takes off. You guys are really set right here to do that. I say you guys, I'm a part of it big time now, so I'm happy to be here. So, but anyway, there is no reason I can see why this subdivision or the city of Pittsburgh is not ready to just take off and explode. Okay, so I'll shut up. You guys want to hear me forever. I can talk about Silverback Landing for a couple hours, and I won't do that to you. But in conclusion, okay, so everything seems to check off the box what we're looking for. Perfect. You have a tradition here at Pitt State. A lot of places don't have that. I go around the country, act like I'm a world traveler, and I'm not. But if I am in the country, somebody says, where are you from? I said, Pittsburgh, Kansas. They go, oh yeah, the Gorillas. How does people have just heard of the Gorillas? We were in Atlanta last week, Nick. Went to the College Hall of Fame. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's this huge wall. I mean, it's big. And they call it the Helmet Wall. Have you been there? Okay. I mean, I look up, Pitt, Redden. I said, no. Well, I went back to the front, and asked the lady, I said, is this just B1? She goes, oh no, it's all the college. Out of all the helmets up there, what jumped out? Pitt State. That's true. I can tell you right where it's at. It's on the right side, about halfway. So, but anyway, it's amazing. The lady even knows that, you know, the Pitt State or something about the gorillas. They really do, Dr. Scott. You guys have done a great job. Thank you for that. I go upstairs, you walk around this interactive thing. You've got this badge that you check in. So when you walk in front of a TV screen, gorillas comes up. Everything about the gorillas, because it's kind of cool how they set it up. But I had a friend that with me went to Iowa State, and he says, "Let's see how many championships and people we've had." He punched it up, nothing came up. So I walked over, here goes Pitt State. You know, all these awards, national championships. I mean, the girls are awesome. I want to see us go D1. So, anyway, I won't get on that. Okay, city management. I've already found out in the short time I've been working with these guys, they're awesome. It's a great management team you put together. Britton and everybody, you guys are great. We have a Kansas governor, it's already been mentioned. She is committed to extending the roads down here. I mean, that's all we need. You get roads all the way. Think about this. We're the hub of southeast Kansas, southwest Missouri. 120 miles from Kansas City, 4-lane. 120 miles from Tulsa, almost 4-lane. Wichita, about 150, we figured out over there. Springfield. All I know is, why can't we get something like a Nebraska Furniture Mart down here in the middle? People with shop, employers, they're gonna hire people like crazy. Let's dream, we can do that. That's not a pie in the sky, that can really happen. Okay, last but not least, and I'll quit. We kept checking off the boxes, everything worked. So I go back to my business partner, which is my wife, because every banker, you guys are bankers in here, they want the spouse to sign on too. So I go to her and I said, "What do you think?" She says, "I have one question." I thought, "Oh, here it comes." The one question was, "Are you thinking with your heart, or are you thinking with your head?" I looked at her and I said, "I'm thinking with my head." She says, "Then what are you waiting on? Get started." So, anyway, Pittsburgh, we're excited to be back here. In conclusion, I want to make an announcement. I had a builder win the Outstanding Home of the Parade in the last fall parade. That's a big deal up in Johnson County. He wants to come to Pittsburgh. He looked at me and says, "Mick, I'll come down there, but I have one question. Do you really believe in your heart homes will sell down there?" I looked at him and I said, "Dwayne, not only do I believe homes will sell, I said, I am just committed that I know it will sell." He says, "I'm on the way." So, thank you all, and glad to be here in Park, Pittsburgh.
Thank you again for investing in our community, and can't wait to see the progress you're making as we speak and the near future. Now, Dr. Scott, I'll take care of the Nebraska Furniture Mart. You take care of the D1 thing. So, as I mentioned, we did carve out time for questions and answers, and I will actually ask. I think I'm supposed to do this. If not, Sarah will throw something at me. If I can have our speakers come back up and take a seat here, so that we don't have to chase you around with a microphone. It's open season now, so feel free to fire away with any questions or clarification or anything like that. I'll maybe get it started, kind of put Dr. Hansen on the spot. We talked a lot today about schools and in our local schools. I know that USD 250 is just launching a strategic plan, and Rich has been doing a number of community engagements. So maybe if you can grab that mic beside you and pass it down to Brad. Brad, what can we expect from USD 250 over the near future?
Very good question. So one of the major pieces, well, I already said, there's five areas of our strategic plan. One is selling ourselves. We've got to do a better job of getting the message out of the great things that we're doing, so that we don't have that negative perception out We're working very, very hard on what we call the Dragon Way, which will launch tomorrow, and it's really going to elevate the expectations. You know, what we heard from the community during the strategic planning process was that for kids to be employable, they need to be trustworthy, they need to have initiative, soft skills. They told us they needed to be good thinkers, they need to be team players, they need to be communicators. So what they didn't tell us was that they had to be good at math or science or whatever. So what we're trying to change the focus is to put those things in place within science and within math and within art and music and so on and so forth, so that we're producing those types of kids that can be employable in your businesses in the future. The biggest thing that we need from you, and I mentioned it, is we need to partner. We've got so much ability, so much business and industry here. You know, I mentioned that I left 35 years ago, and I'm not going to put the blame on anything, but you know, kids in my generation, I was looking, how can I get away from Pittsburgh? It wasn't that it was bad, but I want to go experience something outside. But I didn't have anybody showing me what opportunities I might have at my disposal once I got out of college here in Pittsburgh. We need to do that for our kids, and not just high school kids. K through 12, we need to be intentional about showing them the good things that we have to offer them so that they want to stay and they want to keep things moving forward in Pittsburgh, Kansas.
Very good. Yeah, thank you so much, Brad. Questions? Yes, Mayor.
I have a question for Brad also. Brad, as part of the city commission, we find that when people are looking to be in Pittsburgh, they Google us or they go to those sites that evaluate our schools, all of the other facilities that we have, and we get a bad showing on that. My question is really twofold. One is, how do we address directly to those people who are evaluating us, and are we moving in the right direction to get this problem cleared up?
So 9 times out of 10, greatschools.com or whatever, those sites that are almost on every realtor site, I don't know if we got anybody, I saw Ryan back here, they're always on realtor sites. Those things are based upon test scores. Keep in mind that test scores are one measure, and honestly, we didn't hear in our community any at all about we want our test scores to be high. We want our kids to be responsible. We want our kids to be critical thinkers. We want them to be collaborators, teamwork, so on and so forth. So what we have to do is sell ourselves, show that we're making progress in that area, show that as a community we're developing our kids in the best manner possible. On the test score side, there are some things that we're doing that we started to do curriculum-wise and becoming more consistent. Nothing's been said about preschool today. We've got an awesome center. What a great vision that was 25 years ago. Oh my gosh, you don't see that in very many communities. That's courageous leadership to put that together. But we need more of that, because our problem is, because of a little bit of poverty in our area, which it's going to be here, folks, forever, we've got kids that have less of a start. They get further and further behind in the current assessment environment in the education in the United States. Kids just don't score well if they're behind. And so that's a battle that we're fighting. I think preschool can help that, our curriculum can help it, but we've got to sell what we do really well outside of just one measure of test score. Hope that answered your question.
Other questions? Yes, Michelle.
Dr. Hanson, I attended the strategic planning session, which was nice, but lots of people weren't necessarily there. We did talk about, or Rich talked about mentoring or opportunities we can be involved with the school. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you the first, there's gonna be programs, coming out this fall that give you the opportunity to mentor kids. But starting tomorrow, the mantra in USD 250 on the socio-emotional academic learning piece is teaching kids respect. And that's gonna be the word of the day until the end of September. I would envision that some of you are gonna be called and say, hey, can you come into our buildings and help our kids understand what respect means at your business? Those are the types of conversations that we want to have. Kids will listen to teachers, yes, but it means a heck of a lot more if they know, heck, if Rick Webb walks into a high school classroom and says, this is what respect means in my business in Watco. Wow, that's incredible. Just starting that process, we're going to continue to move forward. The doors are going to be open for you guys to come in and help partner to educate our kids. It takes a village, and you're part of that village. We need your assistance.
Certainly. Well, we thank you for all that the school board and Rich and Brad are doing for our local school community. I've got a question for Britton, and I would encourage Nick to chime in if you'd like to. Britton, you have a unique perspective because you're not only the assistant city planner, but you're also the demographic that we want to attract. So in being a young professional, you and Nick. So tell us what it's like being a part of planning a community to bring in more Brittons and more Nicks, and maybe what you're most excited about in Pittsburgh.
I think from the things I've heard from my peers and even my experience, the push is always to go out and get experience and then figure out what you want to do with your career. It's not always that you're going to go into a job that you're going to do for the rest of your life. You can jump around for a little bit and then settle into something. I think for a long time there was a perception that experience, quote unquote, wasn't in Pittsburgh. You needed to go to a big city and rack up this resume and come back and then create a career at one of the industries or Pitt State or something like that. I think that that's changing as our industries expand and our school district becomes more well-known and more established and progresses. And so I found that quote-unquote experience is more readily available to me here than any of the bigger cities that I went to before during my undergrad for internships and things like that. So I think that those are the things we need to think of when we're looking at keeping young people in daycares. Where if I have a kid, where's it going to go while I go to work? Things like that. Those are the things we need to do to plan our community to attract people like me.
Sure. When I was in college and kind of making my decision on where to go, Pittsburgh really wasn't on my radar, and I grew up here and I kind of wanted to get away. Kansas City was the spot for me. After having lived there in other places, what I tell somebody, it's similar to what she said, is that it's like, why wait? Like if you know kind of where you want to eventually end up, start now. I do think that there are obviously Kansas City companies that come and recruit and everything like that. Maybe more from elsewhere, bigger cities. But that being said, we've experienced here in Pittsburgh, and me moving back, a lot of benefits that Pittsburgh has to offer. For example, like if you look at a UPS map of how long their shipping routes take to get places, we're like kind of right in the middle. And so things that I think with the world maybe getting smaller and transportation changing and things like that, I see opportunities for business that then translate to students in the state being ready to jump on right after college. And I really feel like the cost of living is cheaper. I think that there are some things that are some paradigms maybe that are gonna change, that people will want to stay here and work with us. I think we're trying to come up with, and we have ideas of things. It's just getting the right people to do those things. And so creating those opportunities kind of on us too. Like not just saying, hey, you should stay in Pittsburgh. Yeah, that's great, but at the end of the day, if I'm a college kid, I want you to stay here, but I want you to want to stay here. I want you to work for us, and this is kind of the dream. This is where we're going, and we're in the middle of building that narrative, and so that's kind of kind of what I heard. So that's to say, if you guys know anybody looking for a job, let us know.
Yeah, it's well said. Yeah, thank both of you for your thoughts on that. Questions, please. We have just a couple more minutes, and then we're going to bring up Gordon and Joe to bring it home for us. Come on, don't be shy. Lorianne, Pam, Marty. Yeah, thanks, Devin.
Nick, in your experience with housing developments, you talked about what you saw in Olathe. Do you see business, other industries that pay attention when you're doing a development of that area? Does it generate interest from certain areas or connections you have for potential to bring in other businesses or other developers, or how does that look in terms of building on itself when you're doing a development in the community?
Okay, good question. What we have found up there, that to bring in employers, to bring in retail, things like that, they look at what we call rooftops. And so for Olathe at that point, they were struggling getting business to come into the area, to use that example. We put a development in, a friend of mine by the name of Daryl Rodrock put one in right next to us. All of a sudden we had 200 people within a couple of years living in this area. Here come the retail. Once you start getting nice retail things that people want to go to, guess what? You're getting more developers. It's just cyclical. But the key is, in my opinion, is for the city to take the lead, give them some kind of incentive to get people in, and then it will come back in spades. The taxes will come back from that. I joked about Nebraska Furniture Mart, but not really. I mean, think about it. Nebraska Furniture Mart is 170 miles from here because it's on the north side of Kansas City. Why would they not want to be in the middle of these four things? And Pittsburgh is the hub that makes it work. You guys are sitting on a gold mine right here. If we just have the courage to go forward, we really do. So, did that answer your question?
All right, Marty Beasley.
Okay, I didn't really want to say anything, and this really isn't a question, it's anecdotal. But when I was at the chamber before, I had to call the mayor of Wichita one day, called his office, had a question for him. When we finished the conversation, didn't get to talk to him, talked to his assistant. I said, my goodbyes, and she said, you people out there, have a good day. And I said, well, we're not people out there. We live in the southeast corner of your state, and you should get to know us. And I kind of feel like that we're preaching to the choir, because everyone here has done something, been on a committee, been on a board, served with city government, county government, whatever. What we need to do is, and someone mentioned this earlier, is to get our message out there, but in our own community. There are a lot of people who live among us, and we live among them, that have no idea of the successful companies within our city because they've never taken a tour, never been asked to step inside the door. So we don't have to, I think we need to start with our own population, educate them, and then tell our story everywhere we go. I personally, Dr. Scott, think I recruited a Pitt State student by sitting next to his mother on a plane going to, I don't know where I was going at that time. But tell our story as positively as you can and let people know that, yeah, what maybe their perception is that Pittsburgh is poor and unhealthy, but we've been working on this project a long time. And we are not that. We are successful here, and it's up to us to get that message out.
Dr. Hanson. The theme, of course, is some partnerships, and I hear that your much younger and better-looking boss has brought in a new mentoring program called Teammates, in which anybody in this room might be able to take part in. Can you explain to us what that is all about?
So as I said, in October, we have a unique opportunity. Rich is stepped on the bandwagon with the Teammates program that's been developed by Dr. Tom Osborne, legendary football coach, and I think he's a U.S. Senator, former Senator from the state of Nebraska. He has put together a program. He's also partnered with Bill Snyder, who's going to help him on the Kansas side. But they are creating opportunities in school districts such as ours to enable business people, adults that want to teach positive, just be a positive role model for our kids. There's a lot of those programs out there. One thing that I've heard about with this program that is different is they give every kid a Gallup Strengths Finder test before they start. And we identify what is it that they have the capacity for moving forward, and then we build upon that. Once again, it's not necessarily teachers, it's business people that want to take an interest in the biggest investment that we have is in our children, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be leading this community in the future. And so what do we do to be able to build that? So you're going to hear more of that, but that won't be the only program. Like I said, we want to partner with you. We want you in our schools, but we also want you out. We want to be able to get our kids out to your businesses and learn what it's like to be a productive citizen.
Thank you. Great
Thank you.
great non-leading question there, Dr. Robin. All right, last chance for questions. All right, please help me thank our speakers here today for your time and your thoughts. And now, the call to action, because you knew there was going to be one. We're, again, not just here to talk and have a nice lunch. We need action out of everyone in this room. And what better way to close it out today than to have two pillars of our community, Gordon Elliott, who not only has been a part of every nonprofit organization in town, but also is had a big hand in growing NPC into the global leader that it is, and Joe Delasega, who now is engaged in everything going on in our community. And I've heard people say before, it's impossible to have a bad day when you've been talking to Joe Delasega, because he's that positive. So please help me welcome Gordon Elliott and Joe Delasega.
Thank you, Blake. Positive or just naive? It's going to be a little bit of both. So a little bit about my story with IP 2030. And I venture to say there's a lot of people like you that were in my camp, and I've had an amazing life here in Pittsburg, Kansas. And I heard Darren say the things that were said 9 years ago or whatever. I didn't hear those things, and maybe I chose not to hear them. But to this day, there's a combination of what's perception and then what's reality. And I think we've got both going on. Marty, to your point, the perception is wrong. And we have a lot of the good news is it's easier to change a perception than there is a reality. So there is some reality though. And people that have been dealing with some of these issues, we do have issues, just like every other community. The thing that excites me, and excited me back when I heard IP 2030 was starting, was that we were doing something about it. Raised my family, Janice and I, and I don't know if any of you have done this as your kids begin to age out and they're starting to take opportunities. And you start saying, where am I going to end up? Where am I going? And there's nothing wrong with moving to a community, right, where our kids are, because having a family is what it's all about. So that was where my head was. I don't know. And every time I wanted to make Janice cry, I talk about moving from Pittsburgh. And she'd just start crying, and so I had to stop talking about it. So, but really for my kids, I encouraged them to go away and to see something else. And they did that, and then IP 2030 comes along, and all of a sudden, I was so excited to be part of just the interview process, just to give some feedback, but it gave me hope. And I said, wow, if we don't have this dialogue, then the way we're going is going this way. And so the people that jumped on that, Marty, who headed up, was the first IP 2030 chair, and Brad, I believe, Brad Hodson, you got me. It gave a lot of hope. And about that time, there was some things in my own life that had happened that started to change my perspective, and I said, God doesn't give us tomorrow. And I started thinking about community, and I began realizing that I was running pretty hard in my career and in some of the projects that I had going, but I really had not invested in the community like so many other people who are that I consider very close friends. And so what that looked like wasn't something grandiose. It was joining Rotary. It was connecting you with you, Blake, and getting in the chamber. It really started organically and just kind of start doing some things, get some things done. And then the IP 2030 opportunity, I was asked with Jeremy and Jeff to head that up, version 2.0. Something happened in that period of involvement and engagement. I began to look under the covers and see how great this community really is. I began changing from somebody, I never, ever did not encourage my kids not to come back, but I didn't actively encourage them to come back. And so that dialogue began to change. And I don't know if that's one of the reasons, but it didn't hurt. There are other people that when I'm on the road or I'm out, I talk about Pittsburg, Kansas. And I'll be somebody who's unhappy where they are. I'll say, you ever think about moving to Pittsburg, Kansas? And amazing how people will start to go with you in that conversation. So that's a little bit about me. But along the way, I got real involved in IP 2030, and what happened with Don, I give a lot of credit. Don started pushing the agenda that says if we have this strategic plan, and we have a city commission over here, this city commission needs to know more about this, and they need to get more engaged and ask for that process to happen. And really, we're here because of the commission's bringing up the point of now that we're inside and we're touching this plan closer, this is an amazing plan, and how are we going to make sure other people know the plan? Because it's going to have to grow. And that's the idea of bringing you all together. The reality is we thought, where does the richness of this community lie? It lies in you. All the different organizations that are contributing every day. And so when we say we need you to step up or we need to do it, you're already doing it. We're already doing it. We're doing it one project at a time. So that's the good news. And so today, the ask isn't necessarily going to be some grandiose thing that's different than what you're doing, but it may be a little more about intentionality of what we're doing. So with that said, today was about informing you that we have a plan and letting you know we have some momentum with that plan. We didn't feel like you needed to come and necessarily hear every accomplishment and go down the list of all the things we're going to do. We felt like what was more important was to talk to the heart and talk about inspiration and get people excited about where we live and that we can get into be a bigger part, play a bigger part of this adventure. And the third part was to ask to do something. And what does that look like? So that's what I'm here to do today. And again, Gordon's going to help me bring this home. I would like to share a few observations that this journey of the last 7 years has brought. One thing is, I am so accustomed in my small little world, mostly business environment, that you set up a strategic plan, you set up tasks, you set up people, you get things done, you mark them off the list, you redream, and it's just a process, right? This city work and anything beyond that is messy work, and it is not clean, and we have 21,500, I don't know, probably different attitudes and different values trying to figure this out together. And it's a messy business. And there's no right answer. So when I relaxed with that notion, it just said it's about advancing and getting better. And when we fall forward. And that's what's happening here. A few observations above that, if you'd let me share. One is that we've had success, and we're riding a wave of momentum right now. But that momentum is fleeting, and it can go away at any time. I truly believe and it's been said by a couple people today, I believe in our lifetime, for some of us, not for the younger group, but for some of us, this is a defining moment in the history of Pittsburgh. I think decisions made in the next 12 to 24 months could make Pittsburgh a different community in 25 years than it might be by making other decisions. And that's very exciting to me. I think we have an unprecedented number of leaders in this community. 40 years ago when I was starting out, you could look around and the community did not have leadership like we have today. It's everywhere. It's in this room. And it's not just quantity, it's a quality issue. So when you talk about a perfect storm, Brad, I think you're right. And I think it's felt to the bone, it's felt by a lot of people. I think also, as Don and Darren alluded to, we've got to engage community leaders in this discussion. It's going to be imperative that everyone be informed and know what's going on. And currently, I think the city takes a lot of shots. I think Darren, I think you take a lot of shots. Where's Darren? I think Darren, yeah, he's back in the back. So no, I think that sometimes there's a lot of shots taken, and I think sometimes we don't even know that there's a lot of work carrying out a plan, and that maybe if we don't understand that, but if we do understand it, we're not perfect, and I don't mean to say that the dialogue is bad. You know, we aren't saying shut down the dialogue, but I think the respect thing you talk about, Brad, is exciting. It's how we have that dialogue by everybody. I think the implementation process is not something that the organization right now we're that set up to do. I don't think we're that good at it. I think we have we have 6 high-level areas of focus. I don't think our communication has been as good as it can be, but I think that's where we need your help. And I think that's where we need you in the conversation to help us get better so that we can make sure we get these implemented. Spoiler alert. Before giving you a few of the action items, there's a couple things to think about. There's no magic bullet for engagement. The plan sets out some very lofty ideals. And how we contribute to each of those pillars is going to vary from person to person, organization to organization. And as I mentioned earlier, you are positively advancing this plan. Dr. Wilson, many years ago, and I won't remember the exact story, but I do remember the gist of it. And he told the story of some apes and how the apes had mimicked people and their ability to mimic people. And it was scary what they could do and how they would do it. And there was this one point where these hunters were out, and they came around a corner. Dr. Wilson told it much more eloquently, but he came around the corner, and there was a den. And there were these apes were in the den, and they had wood, and they were all around the wood. But they were missing one thing. What were they missing? The fire. I'll never forget what he said. We didn't have the fire. And that's what you and I have. And so I want you to think of fire when you think of these 4 action items. F, familiarize yourself with this plan. It's in writing, it's on your table. Be ready to speak about it with your family, your friends, and your peers. Know where you can go to get answers. I, identify how you can, within your organization, promote and take on the initiatives of the plan. I was talking to Britton a little bit before, and she said, you know, what would it look like if at our next board meetings we pulled out the plan that you have, and we just asked, what things are we doing in this organization that could advance any of these pillars? It's a great idea. R, respond by filling out a card. There's a card at your table, and it's called Join the Movement. And what we're going to ask you to do is to put your name, your email, answer a couple of questions, but there's 6 areas of focus for the plan. What we'd like for you to do, if you'd like to get a little bit more involved in the process, we'd like for you to check one of these 6 areas, or as many as you like. And we'll find a way to get you plugged in. There will be a steering committee formed as we start to look at, in a couple of years, we're going to be looking at the Plan 3.0. It's a great opportunity to get you on a task force. We had another idea. Again, this is just being formulated. We're going to use today and your comments at the bottom as a springboard to say, how can we get better? It may be that everybody that checks housing, what would it look like if we get together in a week or 2 in an informal basis around a table like this and just get you up to speed and talk about housing, right? Seems informal, but the conversation will lead to a lot of good things. And then E, engage in the conversation. Come to future events. Fill out surveys. Come to a commission meeting. Speak up. Attend a public hearing. Get information from trusted sources. Invest. Share information at your board meetings. Invite IT 2030 leaders to present to your board and or your organization. So fire, familiarize, identify, respond, and engage. That's what we're asking you to do today. A lot of you are already doing it. And to those we say thank you. if you're sitting there thinking, this is something that excites me, please get with one of us that spoke today, get hold of the city, get hold of Blake, and we'll find a way to get you wired in. So what I want to do at this point, I want to step back and I want to introduce Gordon, and I don't want him just to come up and talk, because as I look around the room, many of you know Gordon and you know the history, but there are still new people in the room that I don't know if you can really grasp how great a man Gordon Elliott is. Gordon Elliott came here with several businesses already and experiences under his belt, and then he worked with Gene Bicknell, and I think if Gene were in the room today, the success of National Pizza and the growth of Thames to become a worldwide, the largest Pizza Hut franchisee in the country doesn't happen. They both, those guys complemented each other, they both knew the value of team, and they built an empire that served Pittsburgh and the area very well. The thing about Gordon's the reason I got to come back to town. And I give Gordon as one of my mentors, and I can tell you, I once told Gordon, I said, Gordon, I said, you know, I remember every conversation we've ever had. You ever have people in your life like that? To which he responded, Joe, that scares the hell out of me. So, anyway, a great mentor, a great teacher, a great leader. But the thing about Gordon is he was wired into the community, even as busy as he was. He would leave town on Monday mornings, maybe Sunday nights, and travel and get home on late Thursday night, be in his office Friday, and at the same time found time to be engaged and involved in the community. Maybe even more impressively is upon retirement, when some people can kick back and enjoy the fruits of your labor, Gordon doubled down on the community. If you're with the Family Resource Center, the Community Health Center, the Community Foundation, Ascension Health, and I'm sure there are many Pittsburgh State, you can name others. Gordon Elliott was a part of that, bringing leadership, expertise, just amazing leadership. So for me, the thought, I'm working with Gordon on a project now, it's just an honor to be in the room with him, and I'd like to bring him up for two reasons. One is to share his vision or his observation of what you've seen since coming to Pittsburgh, and lastly, why it's important for us to take this opportunity and answer the call. So, if you would, please give a warm welcome for Gordon Elliott.
Well, here I am. What I really need is sympathy, because every word that I can speak has already been spoken. I've already been thrown under the bus 8 or 10 times and bring your expectations from here down to where it really is. But it's been really quite a day, and I don't honestly believe I've ever stood in front of a group this auspicious and energetic and exciting. So you bring your own excitement. You don't need me to add to it. And if I wanted to, I don't think I could. I do want to play back some of the notes I made today. Blake told us how it happened and why it happened. That's important. History is good. History provides the background for anything that you want to do. Darren, I thought, or Dawn, she was first, group projects. We need each other. Joe just said that very well. We need each other. That's what brings us from here to here. Darren gave us a reality check. I thought, there are a lot of things that people will say that they don't have the foggiest idea what they're talking about, but boy, is it fun to say it and get some appreciation and notoriety. He also talked about what I call the Southeast Kansas syndrome. We can't do it here. Just because they do it over there, Pittsburgh won't go for that. And I don't think over the 50 years I've been here, I've ever been involved in anything, but I didn't have somebody tell me it can't happen, and it won't happen, because we live in Southeast Kansas. Brad talked about the negative comments and the positive outcomes. I thought that was good. We turned those negative comments because most of them do have positive outcomes if we paid attention to them. My friend Brittany, I call her Brittany without a Y. I I met her because she's a friend of my granddaughter, and the first time I met her, she and my granddaughter were standing there, and my granddaughter kept telling me, boy, that's an ugly shirt you're wearing. So right away she became family, because I grabbed her and said, you gotta protect me here. And what an asset. And young, pretty, and smart. We're full of those. We have all kinds of those people around here. And we need to take advantage of them, and she's gonna be a real leader, along with all the other good leaders we have. Nick, this is home, he said. And it's, people are nicer, and they're happier, and there's no traffic. You know, I was interim on Highway 69 Association once, and president of it, and it dawned on me, I didn't want any more traffic here, so I better get off this thing. I'm glad that all my successors and Ken Brock are doing it, because it's a good thing for the community. But boy, do I like that no traffic part. I talked about 50 years, and I'll get into that in a minute. It was talked about growing organically. This is the first time that I've been a part of or seen a 2030 activity that can really make this thing jump. It's happened here, it's happened here, it's happened here. Pretty soon, it's pretty darn nice. But we haven't had this organization. We haven't had these kinds of people sitting here together talking about one goal. Nick used a lot of good words. Blessed. It's pretty nice when you think of your community and you're being blessed by living in a community. Those people that read our demographics don't come through that, do they? We're blessed for living here. The other thing he said that I liked is, why wait till 2030? We've got a lot of time between now and 2030. Let's get at it. Mickey talked about the won't work part. We're hearing too much, Mickey, that people are talking you down, you haven't even come yet. Well, they'll never sell, they're going to do this. That's not right. It is going to be. We're going to be so proud of that community that he's going to build out there, and we need to endorse it. He talked about the right leaders. The time is right. Joe talked about 12 and 24 months. Don't let this get away. We have the best leadership in every organization in this community that we have ever had in the 50 years that I've lived here, and you're all committed to working together, and that's a real positive thing. I wrote down the note when I came here to run Food Town. They had a store in downtown Olathe, and I remember going up there one day with my family, and that was our vacation, going to see stores. And I remember driving around downtown Olathe, and on the way out I said, well, there's not much going on up here, is there? I was one of the ones, and that's the first note I had, I did not choose to be here. I was sent here. I was sent here to manage and turn around the Food Town grocery chain. I would never have volunteered to come to Pittsburgh in August of 1969, 50 years ago. Everything was old. Everything was falling apart. All the major industries, coal mines, and the Kansas City Southern, and McNally's, and Dickey Clay, they were either going out of business, had gone out of business, or they were ready to go out of business. Downtown was full of old buildings, and 6 major chains moved out of here the year that I came. The hospital was the worst. Old Mount Carmel, they had the patient beds in the halls. All the city buildings were in bad shape. Fire station. Those of you who were here living here, most of you are too young to really get the whole grasp of that. But if you came from a city like Minneapolis to Pittsburgh, Kansas in 1969, all you saw was blight and down. But then all of a sudden, and the college, it wasn't the university, the college was a little old campus with a lot of old buildings. Anybody remember going to basketball games on the second floor? Jim, Brian does. mall opened on the north side, on the south side of town, which had been undeveloped. Then the Holiday Inn opened on the north side of town, which hadn't been developed. And then it wasn't very long, and they broke ground for a new hospital. And then the university broke ground for the Wheat building. And about that time, there were a lot of small businesses, De La Sega's business, where they began to grow because the second generation came in and started developing with them. And then new businesses started on kitchen tables and in garages and in, I was going to say outhouses, in outbuildings. And even in boxcars. And I made a list of 24 businesses that are in Pittsburg, Kansas that started here that are for sure regionally, most of them nationally, and a lot of them internationally significant. And those families stayed here, and they provided the leadership, and they provided a lot of financial resources. And when we take people around this community and show them nice things, a lot of those are because of those families that have stayed here. And even if they sold their business, the business is still here, and the commitment from the family is. And those people need to be honored. Maybe that's the reason to have another meeting like this, is to honor some of those folks. So I'm not going to read my list. There were 24 that I put down. 16 of them started just about that time. 8 of them came a little later, and that doesn't include all the big businesses that we have here that didn't start here and have come later when it was really the right place to go. So you've got an IP 2030 plan, and I'm really blown away by the quality of it and all of the work that went into it and the kind of people that have put this together. And I think we just have to be the envy of almost any city in the country that is our size. So, Cal, if you're not inspired now and excited, who's going to do it? There's nothing more that I can say that hasn't been said. And I know you're all ready to go on and get excited. Nick said, why wait till 2030? 2019 is a good time. Let's get going. So, get her done.
Great job, Gordon. Can't think of any better way to close it out than with Gordon and Joe. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we do close out our program, I will make this commitment to you on behalf of everyone involved with the Imagine Pittsburgh 2030 effort. This will not be the last time you hear about this. This is going to be a regular conversation, and as a matter of fact, I want you to go ahead and get the next meeting on your calendars. It will be an evening reception on Tuesday, October 15th. We're still working on location and some other details like that, but we do want to go ahead and get Tuesday, October 15th on your calendar, 6 to 7:30 p.m., and you'll obviously be hearing more details about that. Do encourage you, as Sarah waves the card at me, please feel free to, we ask you to fill out that card that you all have at your table before you leave on different ways that you can get involved. And I'll really just close out with this. If you learned something new about your community today, this was a success. If you're a little more proud of your community than you were when you walked in, this was a success. But most importantly, if your mind is already thinking ahead to how you can be a part of this process and the impact that you can make on this plan and our community, this would be a resounding success. So thank you for being here. Thank you for what you and your organization do for our community. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you again.